Amanda, thanks so much for speaking to me. Michael Atherton described Graham Thorpe as the most gifted player of his generation. Nasser Hussain said he was a man you could always count on in any moment. And your daughters Emma and Kitty said he always gave great advice as a dad and always made them laugh. I just wonder how you remember Graham, the man.
Well, definitely the laughing is important, and he made me laugh. But he didn't take himself too seriously, I think, and he just did things his way. And if that meant not quite following the rules, shall we say, then so be it, and never mind about the consequences.
When did you meet Graham?
In what was it, 2002.
At the Dogs, was it?
Yeah, Wimbledon Dogs, the greyhound, yes.
And what struck you about him when you first met him?
Yes, I'm pretty sure Graham got a cab there or something. Or he was saying, I met my wife at the Dogs. And he said, oh, what track was she running in? That old chestnut, yeah. No, I didn't know anything about cricket or who he was when I met him, yeah.
When you did meet him, because we're going to talk about mental ill health, can you tell me about the journey he went on from when you first met him when it came to struggling with that side of his life?
So Graham, was passionate about cricket and loved it, but he was also a family man and a sensitive man. And his marriage had broken down, but more importantly, he was having difficulty seeing his children, and so he was in a really bad place because of that, and he was tormented, and so he couldn't manage to compartmentalize it, and so he stopped playing. And I met him. So when I think that was the Ashes winter actually. So they'd all gone off. He was picked for that team, and then he said, "I don't think I can do it. The mental health." And I think in the papers they're all saying, he's a disgrace and he must never be picked again because you say you're up for it and then you can't do it. So I met him when he was at home. So because I think that's probably some of the first cricket I ever watched on TV when he's like, just put it on. Yeah.
And did you think that affected him, that perception in the media of what he was going through?
Well, this is a long time ago, right? And so I don't think it would be like that now. So there wasn't any real support there. And it was also like, you were kind of expected probably to not return home in the middle of a tour for the birth of a child. So, okay, yeah, your marriage is right. Just get on with it. You're really privileged to be picked, and it was that sort of thing, I think. And mental health was really pushed to the side.
He stopped playing for England. He joined the coaching setup. What was his mental health journey like in that sort of transition period? How did it evolve through those years?
So I remember when he retired, so when he stopped playing, like all sports, it's a big sort of cliff, isn't it? Kind of the excitement of playing and how do you get that high again? And so he was thinking as well, a bit worried about how will I cope with this. But actually we were in a really good place. I just had Emma a few months after he retired, and we went off. He got offered a job in Australia. So that was quite. He was surprised. I remember him saying, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm in a good place." We had a good few years in Australia. He coached, quite a few of the players who play now, international players, when they were young, at New South Wales. But we were a bit homesick, so we came back after a couple of years.
And what year was that when you came back?
So we came back in 2008.
Okay.
And then he continued coaching a bit with Surrey, and then with England. Started off doing a few sort of just tours, contracting sort of thing, and then I think a year or so later, he had a full-time job with them. He did things like he enjoyed. He was the Lions coach, and he went on a few tours with them. So he liked teaching, being with the youngsters.
He was a big kid, as you
He was a big kid himself, exactly. So that was right up. Just remember, you're the coach, Graham, okay? So don't have too much fun. But he enjoyed that. And then, spotting new talent, or he loved it. But it was also not the full sort of main coaching type of role, because he didn't want to be away for weeks on end. The girls were younger, they were at school and school holidays. And I remember most of the conversations he had with them was he'd agreed to do this trip, but not this trip. And he just wanted a balance. And so we were lucky. You know, some jobs, you know, if you're in certain positions, it really is, it's so full on.
Is it really extreme, the cricketing lifestyle, when it comes to travel in particular, time away from family? Was there part of Graham's personality that you think might have made it particularly difficult for someone like Graham?
Well, in hindsight, you look and you think, you know, is that really a good job and lifestyle for someone like Graham? I mean, he was sensitive, and he used to, I could see actually the week before he was going away, he'd start to steel himself, you know, to kind of write. And it's almost like the different person. He'd be there with his friends, and, you know, he had a lot of fun as well, but he had to almost, not cut himself off. You know, obviously we still talked on the phone, but you have to, you switch to that sort of mode, because you're going to be away for 5 weeks, which is quite a long time. So he'd steel himself, and in that I could feel him almost drifting. So by the time came to go on the tour, I'd be like, just please, go, you know.
And do you think he had support in the environment when he was going through the difficult parts of touring?
I mean, this is sort of, things have obviously got better, and as people have spoken about that more, certainly not in the early days. I think it was, like I say, it's a privilege to go on tour, isn't it? And of course they go to great places. And then from when he first started playing, they were sort of flying economy and sharing rooms. They had to so your turn for the shower and things like that too. So you're going to stay in nice places, you're looked after. But yeah, the mental health support has definitely got better. And then they also allow more families to come, and children. Again, if you have young children, that's okay. But if they're school age, you can't be taking them out of school all the time. So it's not that easy.
And were your children's school age when he was coaching?
Yeah.
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 So you found that difficult?
Yeah. So quite often I didn't go on, So only really the holidays. So, and the ones over Christmas.
Did you find every tour difficult, or were there particular periods, like throughout that time period when he was coaching, that he would say, "Oh, this is a real pinch point," or was it quite a constant thing that he struggled with?
I think the longer the tours, some were really long, so that would be harder. And then also, I think maybe, I don't know, something about Australia, isn't there? You just want to win. Of course, they want to win all the matches, but so they're arch rivals. So there would also be that pressure, which he probably a lot put on himself as well. He was, very competitive, and he'd always be thinking, you're living and breathing cricket, So he would be saying, right, I've got it. This is and I'd be, he'd sort of run things by me. This is what we're going to do, and he'd be thinking about it all the time.
Graham was involved in England cricket in different capacities for around 30 years of his life. And then that came to quite an abrupt end in 2022 at the end of the last Australian Ashes. Tell me about how that period affected Graham.
Well, when you say a long time, I mean, most of his working life, he didn't know anything else really. He started when he was very young. But leading up to that, then obviously there was COVID. So that was difficult for everyone. In 2020, they had everything was shut down, but then when they went back, it was in bubbles. So you're living and working, and you're literally in one place. You can't go out. So Graham found that really difficult. I wouldn't say more difficult than most, but because it was hard for everyone. But for Graham, it was really hard, because it was hard to follow rules which he didn't really see the point of, and it's making something more, even, which was pretty hard already, even harder. So So that had been, so during COVID, so 2021, end of 2020, 2021. And so he'd already been suffering from, because of that build up, I think, from a lot of anxiety, couldn't sleep, and stress, depression. And then, yeah, such a brutal and sudden, which is as what happens in sport. But he didn't see it coming, and he also thought that when he went on that final Ashes tour, the conditions were really difficult, but everyone was pitched in, kept the show on the road. They managed to still play the whole Test match despite half of them falling, having to be quarantined through COVID, but they kept the show together until they got to the end. So he just didn't see it coming after that, yeah.
And there was a video that emerged after the Ashes. What was his reaction to that coming out?
Well, that was his video, which it just shows he was just like, well, what was I doing? But I think he was really teetering on the edge on that tour. He was drinking too much. He found it really difficult. And to me, that just says it. He would never do, he was such a private person, so he'd never do something so silly. But it was just a video, taken almost kind of laughing, saying, yeah, listen, here the PC plod here now. We've got to be told to go to bed because we've stayed up too late. And it was kind of a bit laughing at them, which he sent to two friends. Again, he'd never normally do this, but I mean, can you imagine somebody leaked it, sent it to someone, and it ended up on the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald? He was absolutely mortified. He really couldn't forgive himself. It might seem, silly to someone else, but for Graham, he was absolutely gutted. Everyone can see that he was gutted. He went round on the flight back and apologised personally to every person on that tour, because, they just lost really badly and they don't need someone being silly like that. So it was really, he was highly embarrassed.
Graham lost his coaching job after that series. How was that decision communicated to you guys and to Graham?
Well, yeah, he came back and he was left waiting and knowing that things weren't good, reading things in the paper all the time about the video and that. I mean, it's so wrong to me. So that was bad. A good 2 or 3 weeks, as if that's not a build up to the stress enough. I don't know why they do it like that. And then, he was someone just came round and just told him just at a meeting.
And how did that affect him?
Well, he asked, he said, as I say, he was shocked. He didn't see it coming, which he kind of blames himself, because he's been in the game, he knows what's what, but it was COVID and he just thought, I just didn't think, after we'd done all that. And, although traditionally after the Ashes, lots of scalps go, and he wasn't the only one. So you could look at it like that as well. But he sort of said, well, is there anything else I could do, maybe underneath, a bit of scouting, and that he said no, it needed a clean break. And he didn't cope very well with it at all.
Do you think it had a detrimental effect to his mental well-being, the way it was handled?
Yes, undoubtedly. I mean, he was already under the care of mental health, doctors, and on medication and counselling and so on for a good year before that, so in the COVID and everything, and then with the video and all this, so he was at a pretty vulnerable point. So to tell someone to go for new opportunities and pull the rug like that, not sure how else, who's going to take it, how else you can take it but badly. And he was already, so he was already, I'd say vulnerable. So of course it had an absolutely devastating effect on him.
You could liken it to being released from the army. It's almost 30 years of service, which takes up your time, your soul. There's a family cost to it. There's a physical cost. There's a mental cost. You've in some ways got in a different sense, of course, but you've got the weight of so many others on your shoulders, and then you're told, right, find something else. Did it feel like a sort of army discharge in that way?
Well, actually, that's exactly how I felt it was like, and so did Graham, because it's not a job, 9 to 5, or you're a family, and everything's done sort of, here's your passport, here's your ticket, you've got to be here at this time, everything's organised for you. Put your washing out, that gets picked up, dropped back off. I mean, you do come home in between. I think a lot of wives could probably say, what's with the washing on the floor? So you're kind of looked after in this bubble, like, so that when they say civvy street, sort of coming out of the army, and then it's a whole different. No, you have to renew your own passport. It's a silly example, but the whole support network, let's just say, or any questions you've got, they're there to help you with almost your whole life, because it is almost a way of life, and they support you and make sure you're okay, and then all of that's gone.
If the rug, as you say, hadn't been pulled so drastically from under Graham, if he had been offered a better transition into the new chapter of his life, what difference do you think that might have made?
It's really clear to me that he would still be alive, so it would have made all the difference. I mean, it's hindsight, and no one's got a crystal ball or anything, but it was too much, the cliff. He had another job to go to, and he was offered that job. They came to him, so it's not kind of, that's the whole thing. Oh, I'm unemployed. And he had another job, but it was the whole mental breakdown of, I'm no longer in that family. So it was that sort of thing. And so if he'd had just a little bit of the support framework there to lean on a bit, to just transition a bit more, it would have made all the difference.
The coroner's verdict at the inquest was that the NHS, there was a failure in the care that they showed to Graham. And there was an appointment in June last year that Graham didn't attend, and it wasn't treated as a crisis situation, despite a phone call that an NHS representative employee had with you. But you've spoken to me and said that the coroner's inquest, the window of the inquest, was only 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you think you would have preferred it to have been a wider inquest. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, so it's for the coroner to decide the scope, is what they say. And so obviously, so when Graham was let go, it had a really bad effect, as I've just sort of said, culminating in a crisis point in which, he really hurt himself, and he almost lost his life. So, and then from that point on, but that was over 2 years before he died. And so the coroner, it's time is money, and they decided it's the last 12 months to really, they can't just keep going on indefinitely. I get that. Whereas to me, that's when it started. So you're not seeing the full picture, because that's kind of what caused it. But just simply because I think it's useful to have some kind of inquiry, reflection, to look back on procedures and how things have happened, and to learn and see what improvements and mistakes have been made and what improvements could be made, which is what was done with the NHS, but it hasn't been done for the period before. In other words, Graham's employer, the ECB.
And what level of support did Graham receive once he'd been released by England Cricket?
So when he was let go, he had 10 online counselling sessions.
And what was your reaction to that amount of support?
It's just woeful, isn't it? I mean, 10 online sessions. And as he went through these sessions, it was clear that he wasn't coping. He was getting worse, and we really did ask for help. I knew he needed more help than that, and it wasn't forthcoming. And that's where I think, you know, the ECB might say, well, we didn't know how ill he was, although the doctors that he was under did know, but then they sort of said, oh, but there's a confidentiality. There's got to be some connect, because after the crisis he had, and when he was very ill, then credit where credit is due. The ECB, then they knew, okay, and then they stepped up and they helped him in lots of ways, including, tragically, in my view, offering him, when you get a bit better, you know, come back and on board, and you can just try and do a bit of scouting. And I say tragic because if only they'd offered him that before. I'm not saying whether they were to know or not, but just it's important to talk about it and to look at it. But before then, yes, it was too late. Basically, after this crisis, he was very ill. Like I say, he nearly lost his life. He had a stroke. We don't know how that affected his brain after that. I mean, it was, different. Yeah, it was, yeah.
And have you had conversations with the leadership at England Cricket about that period?
I requested a meeting with them to discuss. I just wanted them to hear what Graham had been through and what happened, really, because so I wanted them to hear it, and I said lessons to be learnt, and to say how it was from our side. And do you think so? Yeah, I have, but I think maybe, I don't know, companies sort of, they don't really want to admit any wrongdoing, do they? And I'm disappointed that they're not prepared to have any scrutiny or look back on or discuss even what they did, because they were just keen to ensure, to say, well, we didn't know and we haven't done anything wrong. Whether that's for legal reasons, then it may be, but this is also about helping, you know, changing things and helping the next generation and making things better in the future.
Do you think there is a danger? Do you think there is a risk of players now and players in the future going through a very similar thing to Graham within the England cricket environment?
Of course I am. I really am. Yeah. And
what lessons do you think, it's a massive question, but what lessons do you think need to be learnt by England cricket?
Well, I think, we can all be blindsided by mental health issues, and someone's coping fine and we just didn't know. But they did know Graham. I just think he was that age, sort of 52, losing a job. A person in a normal job, not sport, it's the classic time for men. Then you take men in sport, perfectionists, and they knew how sensitive he was. I mean, it's scary to think, because you could have someone who wasn't outwardly suffering like Graham, who could still be inwardly suffering, So, it worries me that someone, I think they should have and could have done better with Graham, but even for someone, for others who might not have been suffering already. Anyway, yeah.
Liam Livingstone very recently has been on record saying that when he got dropped earlier this year, he actually had no contact from England cricket, and it was him who had to initiate finding out what had happened. What do you make of that? Do you think that that's a continuation of the problem previously?
I mean, I just find that, is that really that difficult to understand, that for someone's mental health, when they're dropped, to be given a phone call and some reassurance? I mean, Graham used to do it, actually, when he was with some of the youngsters, and it doesn't surprise me. I asked for the meeting, so they didn't contact me at all after Graham died. It was a big part of our lives, the whole thing, cricket and everything, and yeah.
What did the world of cricket do right for Graham and has done for your family? I know you've been involved with Charity Mind and the Cricketers Trust and the PCA. You've mentioned there are things that the world of cricket has done well. Can you speak a bit about that?
The PCA and the Cricketers Trust have been absolutely incredible, amazing. If only we didn't really know about them until after the crisis, really. That's why we sort of wanted to publicise. They're really there for you. And just the cricketing world as a whole. Well, we wanted to do something to raise awareness and money, and everyone's got behind us, especially Surrey. I mean, Surrey, yeah. Graham's home from home. I mean, the mural, and every time I go to the Oval, I have such warm feelings. And we had his wake there. They've all been absolutely amazing.
So it seems to be slightly confusing from the outside, quite a confusing disconnect between what the ECB, the England Cricket are doing, and what a club is doing, a players' association is doing, a charity in cricket's doing. Does that confuse you as well, that sort of lack of alignment from the ECB?
The good point you're making. For an example being, we were on the day, or the few days before the 1st of August, which is Graham's birthday, but we were doing the charity day. We had a couple of players who were going to go on the BBC breakfast, and I think they played. We did an interview for them, and then they were going to be interviewed and saying, yeah. And at the last minute, as in the morning of, they pulled that. And the ECB, I then said, oh, why did that happen? Oh, well, it's a really crucial part of this test match, and we don't really want their focus sort of, it has to all be. I think they'd won by then. I think it was, don't quote me on that. But it was like, we just couldn't. And they told us that at the last minute, and we don't want them to be sort of upset, or it could be a little bit, shying away. They wanted to help, but that wasn't the players. So the management decided. I remember them saying to me, you know how it is, when you're in the middle of test match, it's just we have to do everything we can to protect and bubble and focus. And I'm thinking, yeah, guess where my focus is here. Let's just say it's not, the test match.
If you have a message for England cricket from your experience going forward for future players, what is your message to England cricket and the leadership of that environment?
Well, I just think perfect example is when you do drop players or rotate them or whatever, just a little bit of lines of communication, just that sort of support. And just show that we know they're running a business, they want to win, and it's about, it is a business, but it's people's, their hearts, and they really are all in, the people, spare a thought, because it's a weird, brutal world being a sportsman. I wouldn't recommend it, actually. So and they're just a little bit of contact or support from them can, I'd say, mean quite a lot to the players and their families as well.
Yourself, Emma and Kitty have been really bold, brave, intentional, generous with the way you've spoken about Graham and about the need to work with people, to work with Charity Mind, to work with the Cricketers Trust. You've previously mentioned about breaking down the stigma around mental health, particularly for people in Graham's age bracket. I just wonder what you mean by the word stigma and what it looks like to chip away at that.
Well, I mean, sadly, a lot of it was in Graham's head, because, as you say, that's how their age group, they've been brought up, and they are they're providers, and they're sort of the head of the family, and kind of, yes, we've got some tough times here. We can't be saying, I'm finding it hard to cope. And Graham was known for being mentally strong on the field, but actually in himself, he was just a sensitive guy, who just needed, a bit of support. But I think the stigma, it's getting better, but as more people speak out. But probably sport is the final place, isn't it? Because it's just quite physical, and then that relates to their mental health in some way, but it doesn't, but they think it does. So yeah, I think the more people, the more open conversations we have about it. I mean, especially cricket. I mean, it's a lifestyle. It's not even just a job like a football match. It's you're traveling around. It's you can't get away from it, So of course it's going to take its toll. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But yeah.
I just want to finish on a message to. I know it's so recent, but you're so good at talking about it, and I just wondered what your message would be to people, families in similar situations, dealing with similar struggles of a loved one. What would you say to a family who are going through it, have been through it? What's your message to
them? Reach out. There's more help out there than we were aware of, and you feel like you're just left to deal with it and cope on your own. And I mean, you're not embarrassed, but it is just like, how much more can you say? How's it going? It's not going well. But actually, just you can keep saying that, and actually reach out and never give up. And even though Graham didn't get better, and medication didn't work for him, or people do get better. It might take time. You got to keep trying to be as positive as possible. Yeah.
Is that what you find most helpful?
Yeah, and looking back, I wish I'd because you're there supporting them, but there's no one really to support you. But of course, when you lose someone like this, it's all regrets. Should have done this. Should have said this differently. But at the time, you don't know. Nobody thought this was going to happen. But you're not alone. I'd say for people struggling, and be kind to yourself, because you just think, I'm just in this nightmare. It's like being in a nightmare, but there are other people in it as well.